Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. I just wanted to discuss briefly the ways social media can be helpful for reptile breeders or damaging to reptile breeders, because it is a tool and it can be used well or it can be used poorly. There's a few key targets that I think most social media people want to use their platform for, right? And we're included as reptile people. We want to use it for networking, right? It's incredibly useful for networking. It's more useful than any other tool there's ever been for connecting people who have a similar hobby or passion or industry. And second, you can grow your audience. You can reach more eyeballs, right? Far more easily and quickly than with any other form of advertisement, right? And for cheaper, right? You know, you're not taking out millions of dollars worth of ads on TV across the country. You can target people who are already interested in your hobby and reach them by the millions if you're good at it, right? You know, I'm a teeny tiny little YouTuber and our Reptile Barn social media isn't that big, but it's still extremely beneficial for us, right? Because a lot more people know about us than would otherwise without social media. Now, why is that important financially speaking? It's pretty obvious, I think, but if you're able to convert 1 out of every 4 contacts into a sale, first off, you're awesome. But second off, you might not need social media, you know? Because if you can go to some expos and let people into your facility for some tours, and you're connecting with several hundred people per month, and 1 out of 4 of those contacts becomes a sale, well, then you're golden. You don't need social media unless you want to, right? But most of us are not. None of us, in fact, are converting 1 out of every 4 contacts into a sale. You know, maybe it's 1 out of every 1,000. You can't go to enough shows to make that many connections, right? You gotta have other forms of making those connections if you're only converting 1 out of every 1,000 of them into a sale. Well, nothing is faster or more efficient than social media for making those connections, right? So if you're only making 1 sale for every 1,000 connections, well, go out and make 10,000 connections on social media and you made 10 sales, right? So from a purely financial standpoint, you can see how incredibly useful that is. And then third, and this is, again, it's very related. All these things in social media overlap somewhat, but it's a kind of in my mind, somewhat separate benefit is you can easily and quickly find targeted knowledge. And what I mean is, say I go into my reptile room and my Eastern Indigo, George, is doing something I've never seen him do before, okay? And I don't know if I should be concerned or not. Well, I can jump on Facebook on my phone if I wanted to, right then and there. And I can go to the Drymarchon group that I'm a part of and ask. And there are people on there who have been keeping Drymarchon for decades. People who I've been active enough on social media that I know these are experts. They're not going to just shoot their mouth off with their random opinions. They are experts. They're going to back up what they say. And if any of them chime in and say, oh, no, you're fine, they do this because of blah, 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 well, oh, okay. And I feel better, right? Or they might say, oh, that's concerning, I'd go to the vet. Good to know. I just found out in 30 seconds something that, you know, a few decades ago, I'd be in like an obscure aisle in a library digging through old tomes trying to find something on Drymark. I mean, it would just be a nightmare trying to figure that out. You'd be paying hundreds of dollars every single time you had a concern to a veterinarian. That's what you'd be doing, right? Instead, you can get really good access to knowledge quickly because of social media. You can connect with people. It's targeted. It's not just putting out, you know, your question into the ether. It's very, very specific. If you are active on social media, you know who to ask. You know what groups to go on. If you're on Facebook, you know what YouTube channels might discuss this. You know whose feed on Instagram. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's very easy. Very easy. It's made things convenient for us when we want to learn something. So, what are some cons? I think, again, the most obvious con is that people have too much power over you. And what I mean by that is, here, take this guy for example. This is Glorfindel. He's amazing. Just admire for a second before we go on. Okay, we're good. So he's got a little spot of stuck shed on the side of his head. I can't get it into focus, so you might not be able to see it. But it's a little smaller than a dime-sized piece of stuck shed. I'll get it off here in a minute. What if somebody was having a bad day and they decided in their stupid little head that I'm a terrible reptile keeper because they saw my animal has a piece of stuck shed on him, right? And instead of doing the right thing, which would be to mind their own business, or the other right thing, which would be to approach me personally, not in the public sphere, and ask me, politely, hey, are you concerned about, I saw this thing, they're not going to do that. Nobody does that, right? Nobody minds their own business on social media, and nobody calmly and politely approaches the individual and asks them politely about their problem. They just go on blast immediately. Sometimes completely in public, so at least you are seeing what's happening to your reputation going down the drain, but sometimes behind your back, so you can't even defend yourself. And before you realize that someone even had a problem, 1,000 people have been told how terrible you are as a reptile keeper. And you're screwed. You're just screwed, right? It's going to take forever to undo that damage. And it turns out the person was wrong, right? They didn't even ruin your reputation for a good reason. You know what I mean? So the access people have to you is sometimes a real problem on social media. And related to that, the stress it puts you under. Everyone's like, oh, these social media people are so fake. And I'm like, well, no duh, they're fake. They feel like they have to hide every single flaw. Otherwise, everyone's going to destroy them. So the fakeness of it, the stress of it, the ease in which your reputation can be smashed, these are all cons. These are all big cons, right? But unfortunately, there's more. What about bad information, right? What if you go on one of these Facebook groups for Dry Marcon and you ask your question and somebody gives you a terrible answer, but you don't know it's a terrible answer. If you knew what the answer was, you wouldn't be on there asking. So you're on there, you ask your question, and someone gives you an answer, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it's no big deal. Well, it was a big deal. It turns out your snake is super sick. You got bad information, right? There's no way to trust social media fully. You have to get on there and really be involved so that you know who to trust beforehand, right? You can't just neglect your social media entirely and then expect to be able to reap all the benefits of it when you finally do need it. And that's a time commitment. And it's a time commitment that to many of us is a drain. We don't love social media. Many people don't. Many people are addicted to it without loving it. Many people do love it, and some people just don't like it that much, but it's very useful, so they use it. So to those people, they don't want to spend a huge amount of time getting to know all the different platforms and all the people on those platforms and the most important content creators and blah, 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 blah. They just don't want to. To them, it's a drain on their time and energy, right? But if you want to use it properly and get the benefits from it, well, then you got to put in the time. So it's a two-edged sword. But there are huge, huge benefits for a business, especially if you're in the reptile business, right? So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I hear a lot of people saying, I got to grow my social media. I got to grow my social media. And I just want people to pause and think, well, what do I mean by that? Why and how do you got to grow your social media? What is your goal? Why are you growing it? If you're just growing it because you are addicted to watching your subscriber count grow, if you're growing it because you think you're going to be a millionaire by next year with your social media, these might not be good reasons to spend your time on it, right? But if you're growing it because you're like, oh man, I need to network, and I'm going to pick 2 specific social medias that I think are going to be the most useful for what I'm doing, and I'm going to network like crazy. I'm not that interested in pushing sales right now. I want to network with the people who are in the know in these species that I keep. Awesome. Perfect reason. Or conversely, if you're like, hey, I've done the research, I've connected with the people I want to connect with, now I really want to reach some eyeballs. I want thousands of people to know that I'm breeding blah, 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 blah species or blah, blah, blah morph. Okay, good reason too. You'll definitely increase your sales if you're reaching more people on social media. So the only other plug I would give in favor is that all of those things for me feel even more important because I can't go to super shows and vend. I don't have that option. I cannot go into a building and vend in front of thousands of rabid reptile fans who came there specifically to buy reptiles. I'm in Alaska. Geographically, it just doesn't work. Am I going to ship down a whole bunch of snakes and fly myself down and hide them in a hotel? It's unfeasible. So I really need social media to do my legwork for me, right? And now I'm a hypocrite because I don't put enough time into social media, right? I think we have a good YouTube channel. I keep up with Instagram, fine. But I certainly don't do enough. I don't show everything we're breeding. I don't show all our babies. I don't do enough to have a really customer-based social media. And that's okay. I do what I like, and I'm happy with it. I'm very grateful for all of you who put up with me and for some reason watch my videos. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on social media. Again, I'm not trying to bash it or say that it's so great. I think it's really what you put into it. That's what you're going to get out of it. If you buckle down and you learn the tricks of the trade and you're expert and you put the time and effort into it, I only ever have good thumbnails if Liz makes one because I don't like doing it. So that's something that I know statistically is useful, but I don't do it. I should, I just don't. But Liz does sometimes. So anyway, I'll let y'all go. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we are going to be showing you some baby videos coming up next. Very excited about that. But anyway, until next time, we're the Reptile Barn.